To order the Policies and Priorities Committee meeting, January 14th, 2019. Before the approval of the agenda, I'd like to try and add 3 items into Section 8 for discussion. So I'd like to move that we add item 8.3, a discussion on Grizzfest. Item 8.4, a discussion on a development of a snow removal policy. And item, tell me if I'm going too fast, item 8.5, a discussion on the status of Sakunka Place. The reasoning for Sakunka Place is I had a visit with 4 homeowners yesterday and saw firsthand what's going on over there. And I think it's important that we add that as a discussion item this evening. So if I could have a seconder on that, and we'll open up for discussion, and then I need unanimous vote to include these items under Section 8. So if I can have a seconder.
I will second, but I believe we need to go through each item individually. I believe that's...
Oh, a vote on all 3, yeah, individually. Yes, of course.
Yeah, so we can start with 8.3 Grizzfest.
Okay.
I'll second, we add that to 8.3.
Okay, thank you. Open for discussion. Councillor Howe.
So what in particular to Grizzfest? Just anything?
I'd like to focus it on a yes or no answer vote, whether or not we are in support of supporting Grizzfest to some degree. Obviously, we can't decide level of support, but I think it's important that we determine if council wants this event to continue this year. And we've already gotten to the point of 2 months behind, so we need to get some sort of a direction with that. So how?
Cool. So I'll be voting against that on based on what you've said there. I think council has provided direction to Grizzfest in the last time they came in. We did not come up with a fixed amount, but it is my opinion that there is the flavor of the most of council that was here that day that we do support Grizzfest. We just did not support it to the tune of that they had come in and asked for.
Okay, well, and rightfully so. It was I did watch the video, and it was undecisive with the delegation here. So it would probably benefit us all if we did come up with some sort of a direction this evening with the discussion item.
Okay.
That's my thought on adding that as a discussion item. Any other discussion in regards to that? So, Councillor Norbury?
My only concern is that if we came up with a number tonight, say we decided that we want...
We can't.
Okay, we can't come up with anything, okay. Because my concern is that, whatever we decide, I would like to hear the opinions of the 3 councillors missing, because we're going to have that debate in a council meeting before anything gets moved. So,
absolutely.
And previously I suggested that maybe Grizzfest is deserving of its own council meeting, or we should keep it to...
Those are the suggestions that that's why I'd like to add this discussion to the discussion item.
Fair enough.
So, any other questions before I call the question? So all in favor of adding Grizzfest as item 8.3 discussion item? Carried, thank you. Item 8.4, discussion of snow removal policy and procedure. Seconder for that, Councillor Howe, seconder. Open for discussion or questions? All in favor of adding snow removal policy 8.4? Carried, thank you. 8.5, Sakunka Place. Basically a status on what's going on there. Seconder. Councillor Norbury. Any questions, Councillor Howe?
There may be something in there that we have to discuss in closed. There's an issue that I'm aware of out there that I think that needs to be discussed in closed.
Okay.
So I don't know how that works or what's the proper way to do that.
Well, grounds for closed is,
I think in my opinion, it's a legal issue, so.
okay, well, if we, maybe we can vote down adding it to discussion item, but have another motion to move it to our close this evening. Councillor Howe, sorry.
And just to staff there, could we start it in closed to see if it is what I wanted to talk about is
And come out of closed.
right, or to make sure that we,
I think so.
my fear is that we may bring up, I'm not even gonna go down that road, but
I think we have grounds to move it to closed, Councillor Norbert.
You know, if we have concerns about legality of discussion topics, maybe we should table the discussion of the status of Secunca Place until we can have clarification, right? Like,
On whether or not we can move it to closed?
no, I think we should just have Councillor Howe's concerns brought up privately to staff or yourself, and then once that question of legality is solved, then we know whether it's closed or not. You know, yeah. I mean, maybe maybe we're rushing ahead of this, and the status of Secunca Place needs to come from a staff report, and then we can discuss it with a little more knowledge behind it, and then we can have Councillor Howe's.
I agree, and that's basically
addressed.
what I would be making a motion for is for staff to make a report on it, and we can bring it to a regular council meeting. I do agree 100% that this could be moved to a closed session, which we do have again tonight. Yeah, it absolutely has grounds to go into closed. So if that's the way council would like it to go, we need to vote down the motion to move it into discussion item section 8 and have another motion to go into closed. But again, that would have to be unanimous. Yeah, so any other questions before I call the question? All in favor of moving 8.5, or sorry, adding discussion item 8.5 Secunca Place assessment into the discussion item? All opposed? Okay. Defeated? So would somebody like to make another motion? Councillor Majinski?
I'd like to make a motion for the discussion of Secunca Place to be moved to a closed meeting.
Item 10.1. Okay.
10.1.
Mr. Wall.
We're gonna need to know this section of the community charter that you're gonna go into closed under.
That would be section 92E, I believe, or possibly 91E. Just double check.
The acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. So that would be if council was considered purchasing the land.
Or improvements, so we would be talking possible improvements as well.
No, that's if you're going to purchase an improvement, not make an improvement.
Only purchase it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, we can, Councillor Howe.
for what I would think, it was just that there could be names and people used in discussion there that I would be concerned that if we said something wrong, we could possibly face a lawsuit, so.
Right, so is there, I'm not 100% familiar with the community charter, is there a section in 90 that would deal with that?
Possibly J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Act. But this is when we're talking about going into closed, you guys. I would recommend that you find out
what
For
the,
sure, before you go into closed, especially on something like this, because if council is going into closed on items that you may be making decisions on in the future, it can leave you in a liability situation for the people that are affected by it.
okay,
I would suggest that you find out for sure before you go into closed.
okay, let's have a one-on-one on that. Counselor
Sorry, I
Howard?
just, is there not something in the community charter that says something to the degree of that you're allowed to go into closed to hear the person out type of thing, so that to see if it is a discussion for closed? I think it was N.
So there is the consideration of whether a council meeting should be closed under a provision of this subsection or another subsection. But if the purpose is to go in under N to find out if you can go in under J,
No, the purpose is to go in under N to ask you guys,
yeah,
if I say this type of stuff in an open meeting, are we open for a lawsuit? And then you guys can tell us. That's kind of what I'm looking.
Mr. Watt?
so that's two different tests there. So to go in under N to find out if you are permitted to go in under J, I wouldn't be prepared at this point to tell you yes or no. It's something we'd have to review under the Freedom of Information Act to see whether or not the information you're talking about is protected underneath it. And then the other test is the community charter doesn't provide protection against council to go into closed for saying something that you could get sued for. That's not one of the issues. You can't say, well, if I say this, I
There's
can
still
get
minutes
sued.
being taken and everything, yeah.
Yeah, that's there's no protection under the community charter to prevent a lawsuit against the district. But to
we'll
go
have a
in
private
under
meeting
N to ask
about
about
that.
J, I would need more time, and I believe corporate would need more time to find out exactly if that works under the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay, Counselor Norbury?
Yeah, and I think if we're gonna get into specifics, maybe there's ways that we can discuss specifics without, particularly using names and just, for me, it's, if we're talking about, I think it's just stay in.
Yeah, and
in
basically
open.
it comes down to, I have to decide if that information needs to go to close. So we'll have a follow-up with that. So, okay, we'll leave Secunca Place for another day. So I think we've added the two items, 8.3, 8.4. So item 2.1, approval of agenda. Recommendation, please. Counselor Norbury?
That council approves the Monday, January 14th, 2019 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting agenda as amended.
Excellent. Second, Counselor Majinski, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Adoption of minutes, item 3.1, recommendation, please. Counselor Norbury?
That the minutes of December 10th, 2018 Policies and Priority Committee minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Counselor Majinski, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, no business arising from the minutes, no petitions and delegations. Correspondence, item 6.1. Kees and Christine Vandenberg, living quarters. Correspondence from Kees and Christine Vandenberg dated January 2nd, 2019, asking for approval to turn part of a unit in their building located at 320 Isles Way into a living area. Recommendation, please. Counselor Howell.
Discussion?
Seconder, Counselor Majinski, open for discussion.
So I just want to confirm with staff there that every time somebody writes us a letter, we do give them a letter back, right? We do reply to them?
Okay, Mr. Wall.
The direction that council took on the last meeting was that when there's serious discussion from council on the item, then you reply back to them. But like, for example, if this was just received for information,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be something that we reply back.
Okay.
Counselor Majinski, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Member Trent. I actually spoke to Pete briefly this afternoon, and he had notified me that there are other areas in town within the working area of this, in town here that people have actually resided in, and I don't know if that was from an old bylaw or if it's current or if it had changed since 2012, but there was some areas in town that people did live in the commercial areas here. And I just want to find out if there's more information on that.
So I did send out an email today asking about the zoning. Did you see it by chance?
No.
Okay, so that area is zoned C1, and
Oh, yes, sorry.
so that zoning doesn't allow for residential property. But from what I got from this letter, it's an initial letter to look into it. There's a lot more steps involved. From what I see right now, it's zoned C1, so at this time, it's impossible to allow that at this time, but there is definitely a process. If they want to continue this process, they would need to work with staff to go about it the right way. Mr. Wall, would you like to expand on that?
So they can file a zoning amendment request, change the zoning request, and then it would come through, it would be vetted through staff, and it would come through council, and then council could make the decision on if you wanted to allow it. You could provide a spot zone, you could provide a change of zoning, you could change the zoning bylaw to allow this type of behavior across the entire zone.
But there's quite a process involved to do that, as well as the 2-week public consultation too, right? So
Yeah, anything that requires a zoning change requires us to go out on a public notification period to ensure that anybody who may be affected by it is made aware. And that has to be at least 2 weeks where we get the public notice back. And on this one, there's likely going to be a public hearing required in order to do it.
yeah. So I would like to move that we receive this correspondence for information. And I'd also like to request staff to work with them if they want to continue this procedure, and then it'll start the process properly, but then we also have a decision to make in the future. Councilor Norbury.
So, I'd be happy making that motion that, to be added to the next council meeting, that staff work with Keith and Christine Vanderbert on the proper procedure on how to request zoning changes to their potential new unit of 3 miles away.
Okay, so that's a notice of motion to the next meeting is what you're saying?
I'm not sure council needs to make that motion. We can
Yeah, I
talk
don't-
to Keith and Christine about how they need to apply. And I'm not sure how familiar they are in the process of doing this. It may be that they were simply trying to get the flavor of council before they spent it's a $300 application fee. If council doesn't want to give an indication of what you would vote at the end of it because you don't have the information, that's fine. But we can talk to Christine and Keys about simply paying the fee and putting the application in.
That's kind of the reason why I'd like to motion this for information. Realistically, we can't make any decision on this the way it's presented to us. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and I can understand where you're coming from to try to originally bring it for information. But we've already started down the discussion path, and we can just drop it type of thing. I don't think we need to bring it back and say it's information. But this isn't the normal course of a business for us to do anyways. This is a staff thing, right? This is,
Yeah.
they have to work with every resident anyway.
Yeah.
If they'd actually came forward and said they're putting it in and we have some say, then we go. But, this is something that Keys and Christine have to work with staff, and we don't have any say whether they can or cannot do that anyways over staff, right?
I agree. Okay, any other discussion on this item? Okay. We'll move on to 6.2. Correspondence from Royal Canadian Mountain Police, GasLink Pipeline. Councilor Norbury.
For information.
Okay, seconder. Councilor Majinski. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. 6.3, West Coast Environmental Law. Sorry? Councilor.
Yeah, 6.3 for information.
Thank you very
Don't
much.
even want to hear it.
Okay. Seconder on that. Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Carried. So, just so you all know, in the future, These kind of correspondences are going to be grouped together and make one motion for information or discussion. Sorry, for information, but then you also have the opportunity to discuss any items within that group.
Want to pick one out or something?
Yes, so that's in the future what's gonna,
Okay.
so that we don't have to go through each one by one. Okay, item 7.1, curbside recycling. Excuse me. Report previously submitted to council regarding curbside recycling options for Tumbler Ridge. Recommendation, please. Councillor Norbury.
For discussion.
Seconder, Councillor Majinski. Open for discussion. Councillor Norbury.
I believe Mr. Wall.
Sorry, Councillor, Mr. Wall.
Thanks. I thought I'd just set the stage with this. So this is the report that we did a number of years ago when we were taking a look at curbside recycling. I wanted to provide it to council, but I also wanted to let you know that quite a bit has changed in the intervening time from when this report was made. This was all done under MMBC, which no longer exists. That was a provincial incentive program. MMBC has morphed into a different agency that is not dealing with communities our size right now. So if we want to move forward with curbside recycling, we can do so, but it's going to take a number of other reports and it's going to take some research by staff. The big loss for us in MMBC is that the incentives that they were going to provide for us to do curbside recycling are going to be gone, so we won't get any support from the provincial government to do this. And on top of that, the downstream where our recycling was going to go under this program was already figured out for us. They were going to handle all of that, and that's not the case anymore. We're going to have to arrange deals with a private recycler to take our recycling. So it's a path we can walk down, but it's going to take time and research before we know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that the report is 3 years old now. So pricing is definitely going to be different. Okay. Did we get it? Yeah, we did the discussion. Sorry. Councillor Norbury.
It's all good. Yeah, and looking at if MMBC is no longer there, I mean, you look at the numbers on here, and it goes from $200,000 to $571, and whether a resident's willing to pay that or not, I'm not, I mean that's not even a solid number, right? That was 2016 number, but I
Right.
think I think curbside recycling is what the community wants, but we need to fully research what we actually need to do. I mean, if you look at Dawson, you look at Poos, they're all dealing with the contract company, Waste Management, So they're just say, hey, Waste Management, take my stuff. We don't have that option. We might be able to just truck our stuff out there, but, we don't have trucks that capable of doing that. Or, so I think we need staff to sort of look at this and come up with some feasibilities for us because, we are in a different position than Chetwynd and Dawson, where they already have a company willing to do this. They're ready to go. Maybe that discussion is, hey, can you expand into Tumbler Ridge? And great, contract it out again. But
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you're definitely right. I mean, I don't want to rush into this at all. I think reports need to be asked of staff for current, as well as looking at the options on the downstream side and more than one company, definitely. The reason I don't want to rush into this is because I want to do it correctly and I don't want to have a hassle in the end. Dawson Creek is having a hassle big time right now. They've had to hire 2 more staff to go around and open the lids on all the recycling bins and flag if it's contaminated or not. That's something I don't want to get into. Mm-hmm. So the research side of it definitely needs to continue before we make any decision on it. Yeah, Councillor Norbury.
Poos similarly.
Absolutely.
They said it was like a whole, sack of cats when they opened it up.
Yeah. One possible solution to that, in my eyes, is for the recycling pickup is 1 week strictly cardboard, 1 week you do strictly plastic, but that's also dependent on our downstream provider as well. If we do find a downstream provider that takes mixed waste, even better. but we need to let staff research that, I think. So I would like to make a recommendation that we ask staff for a new report, but I'm open to any more questions or discussion on it. Councilor Majinski.
So if we're gonna ask staff for another report on curbside recycling, is that going to be something to do with a sort facility to expand on what we have here to house everything? Because if we're gonna have it all baled up here, ready to go out, it'll have to be in a dry environment.
We certainly can include that, because that really is encompassing on the entire program, is space to house it, space for our new baler. It really would encompass the whole process.
Okay, and the
Downstream,
shipping as well.
upstream,
Where we are.
full report. I would like. Councillor Howe.
And options. I mean, we don't have to necessarily sort it here. There's no reason you couldn't do great big bulk bins, very similar to the waste that we do here in town. You know, you have,
Sure.
say 1 week, you have a big blue bin down there, and all that stuff goes into a big truck and goes out of town, and it gets sorted at
The downstream side.
a facility where there's more population or whatever. There's people already doing it. It's already in place. There's already a building and a baler,
Yeah.
and this and that, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think this is gonna definitely benefit the town to move in this degree. But like I say, I don't wanna rush into it. I wanna think it out and plan it out properly so that we can possibly add a service to Tumbler Ridge, but also make it somewhat profitable on our end as well. Councillor Howell.
yeah, and that's to me is a big discussion for me. There's always the feel good side of we recycle in Tumbler Ridge. Is recycling in Tumbler Ridge worth about $500,000 more in taxes? Is it worth a 50% increase in your residential taxes? That's the number you're looking at if it's $500,000, right? In my mind, I don't think you're going to sell that to the people at Tumbler Ridge. Right now, the last time I seen the numbers, we are able to get rid of our garbage in Tumbler Ridge for $65,000 a year. That's amazing. All of our garbage in Tumbler Ridge is gone for $65,000.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know for sure, but doesn't the PRRD have something to do with that as well? Subsidized to some degree?
Yeah, because we have a bit of a recycling. The way I understand it, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't.
Our tipping fees are less because we already take cardboard and stuff out.
Yeah, right. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, I mean, the preliminary guess is that, we're, right now, we can expect a 10 times
Volume.
up volume in recyclables, right? So, I don't know how specific we can be with staff in terms of looking for options. It would be great if there was an option just to be as hands-off as possible, or what, I think, and that's something we need to let staff look into for us, right? Is it even feasible just to say, hey, can we just pay a light fee and they can take care of it? Can we just, truck it out and just dump it off somewhere? Like, what level do we need to do? And we need to have that, let staff do that research for us.
The options I would think that we would ask for is the downstream options, whether it's mixed, whether it's single, how much from each company. That's the options I'm thinking of. Councillor Norbury.
And how much do we need to invest in terms of infrastructure, creation of new jobs, because I believe Councillor Howe is correct in that everyone wants recycling, but they don't particularly want to have to pay 50% more in property taxes, right? So, I believe staff are capable to provide us with a spectrum of options and service levels, right? Like, we can have partial service levels, high service levels at different costs, right?
Councillor Howell.
Yeah, and the beauty of what we did in the previous council is that the truck that we bought and the bins, we did invest with the thought that if a council down the road ever wants to do this, we think we've bought the right gear for it already, right? So there was a lot of thought put into that.
Prep work.
That the opportunity would be there, and really it was left with basically if the incentives came out again, if we started down the process, we bought the baler, we thought we were going to be able to get our product into this MMBC or whatever it is, and somehow the carpet got pulled out from underneath of us. At the end of the day, we still have that baler sitting in Public Works yard under a tarp, the way I understand it.
Scratches on it.
Well, hopefully.
Because I lifted it.
But but you know, it's sitting there, and you know, I mean, that we've had the discussion in here before. Perhaps until we get our ducks in a row about recycling, that we should get rid of that baler. You know, should we look at selling that baler, or should we look at going back to the, you know, I don't know where that ever went or why we could never come up with a plan on that, but in my recollection, that's over $200,000 piece of equipment sitting out there. So
Yeah. And that should be included in the report as well, as if we're not satisfied with the options on the downstream side, then let's liquidate too, right? So, so do I need to make a motion for a report on that? Okay, so I'd like to move to ask staff to make a new report with recycling options for curbside recycling as well as downstream options. That's good. Okay, seconder, Councillor Norbury. Any more discussion on it? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, discussion item 8.1, strategic planning. So I was going over the previous minutes about what we had discussed last time as far as strategic planning goes. And basically, like, all of you know that I'd like to move this structure of a meeting to specifically talk about strategic planning. So my thinking on that is it's really going to, the success of that meeting is going to depend on all of council helping me develop an agenda for that. So anything you want to talk about, like for example, you brought up snow removal this week, that's definitely an item that can be added into strategic planning. Anything that you guys want to talk about in more depth as far as planning goes for the district falls under a strategic planning platform. And that's kind of why I want to move this meeting in that direction to focus so that we can get organized over the next 4 years. So, yeah, that's kind of my thinking on the strategic planning goes. So just going over the previous minutes, Councillor Norbury had expressed interest in looking at recreation facilities and what is over and underused. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Norbury, but I think you'd like to request a study done on the utilization of the community center. Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, I mean, for me, I'm really interested to see what that research firm has to give back to us in terms of the recreation master plan, and you know, I'm hoping to use that as, you know, the tool to look at gauging statistics and how things are being utilized in the community, right?
Sorry to interrupt, but my fear with that master plan is it's not going to have the utilization statistics that you're going to be looking for. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking by this that we should be looking at possibly including another study done on utilization. Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to look at is just how much use are we really getting out of some of our facilities, right? Like how booked are the rooms? I mean, I know anecdotally how much is being used at certain times, but you know, I think we really need to have some real hard numbers to say that this many people are utilizing this facility, and these are the you know, just I think that can be a way to guide us in what is underutilized and
100%.
Overutilized, right?
100%.
You know, looking forward, we need to have as much information as possible. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's great for, you know, me to say, you know, I go to the gym and it's packed. Well, it might be packed from 5 to 7, right? Or it might be packed from the narrow times that I'm in there, right? But having, well, for a room this size, we have X amount of people in there, and if we're getting that much traffic, well, then we should have something X bigger or smaller.
Yeah, it definitely will give us all, with those kind of statistics of utilization. I mean, we've done it in the crane industry too. It definitely gives you an idea of what's overutilized, what's underutilized, where we need to improve, what we may possibly need to scale back. I mean, I think that's what you're looking for, right? Yeah, that's useful information all around, Councilor Norbert.
And like that's sort of, when we're looking at education, it's sort of like person-led, right? So we're using those statistics to show us which direction we should be going, right? Because we're not just listening to who's the loudest. We're looking at, well, this is the black and the white. This is being used. Let's continue down this route.
100%. Yeah. No, I
And
agree.
we should develop it.
I
that way,
agree.
Purpose-led.
Do you guys have any other discussion or questions on that? Councillor Howell?
Yeah, maybe I'm not. Recreation master plan, that's in progress. It's happening, and we'll see where that comes out. Again, wait to see what we get out of it. But getting statistics, yeah, I could see an idea of where that would be nice to have, but to waste staff's time to hire somebody to get statistics, is there not maybe a better way that staff could let you know which facilities are utilized and which ones aren't? Like, and so what if the hockey rink, for instance, is underutilized? The curling rink is we know the curling rink is underutilized. We just about lost it a couple of years here ago. But so what if we were to come in and say it's underutilized? We're not going to use it anymore. Like, it's.
I think it's useful information for decision making in the future, especially if we're thinking about expanding a service or expanding the rec center as well.
Fair enough, but like segments of the rec center, like, are you going to expand the hockey rink? Well, no, the hockey rink is in place. It's not. You don't need. Is it underutilized? Yes, it's underutilized, right? But the staff has already put things in place to try to up utilization. They came up with the idea to offer block booking for minor hockey and for figure skating and for old timers. They've initiated more public skates. They've put in more drop-in hockeys. So they're trying to do things on their end to up the usage there. If there are specific areas of the rec center, I could see that being worthwhile. But I remember that the gym, there was a way through the finance department, they were able to show us that it was the only thing that made profit in the rec center.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you think that we could get those kind of statistics already instead of using an outside form?
Maybe you can't get numbers. Maybe you can't say, hey, the rink has used X number of hours per year or whatever, but you can get statistics to find out what makes you money in the rec center and what costs you money. And then you got to have that political debate, on is that worth it? I think the library gets high utilization. I think there's a lot of people go in and out of those doors, but the library also gets a large chunk of funding to be able to do that, right? Vice versa, the gym, we were told, and maybe it's not true anymore, but it was at one point, with the only thing in the rec center that turned a profit. I don't know if that's still the case, but I think that's something that if we go to staff and involve them in the discussion, they may be able to help. Like, I don't know where you guys are going with this. Maybe you're thinking,
What I'm thinking is,
badminton court in, or I don't know what you're thinking, right?
I would definitely like clearer picture on utilization of the building for future decisions. And my thinking is that an outside firm would be able to do a very complex analysis on it, and that's up for debate, of course. But I think the statistics could possibly be brought out by our own staff. It would just take time away from other duties, of course. But yeah, Mr. Wall.
I think that when it comes down to usage per person, you're not going to be able to find out that because we book in blocks. If you take a look at hockey's booked it for an hour. Is there 5 kids on the ice? Is there 20? When room 4 is booked, is it 100 people in there? Is there only 3? Where we probably do have data is the percentage of booking time for any given facility versus unbooked time. That we can find out. I don't think bringing in an external firm is going to do that for you because either we have the data or we don't. The community center was only fairly recently digitized when it comes to booking rooms when the ERAC system launched last year. So I'll go and take a look at what type of data we have that we can provide, and it's either going to be a case, honestly, of it's very easy and here it is, or we can't get it until we until we allow the EREC system more time to capture that historical data. Like bringing
Gotcha.
in a firm
Gotcha.
to come in, they're going to have to sit here all year and check the usage, because it may be, room 2 doesn't get used in the fall, but in the spring it's booked solid.
Yeah, and realistically, it's up to us to have the data to give the outside firm as well.
And so, and
I
if we
get it.
have that data, it'll be easy to see. So I'll go and find out what we do have on the back end. It may be that our old Excel-based systems have something that can be pulled out, and maybe that they don't. So let me find out.
Depending on timeline too, whether or not it'd be applicable to
But I
council.
think just overall count, we will do our best to give council all the information that we can, so you guys can make those decisions come the receipt of your recreation master plan on where you want to move forward
That'd be awesome.
in booking or in changing the community center.
Excellent. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to touch base on the community center and the gym, and the recreation that goes on in there. It could be a trending thing, but gyms are very popular and they always have been. But now with CrossFit, all these different types of activities, they can't be actually done in the gyms because it's a limited space. So the racket courts are getting used up for these CrossFit activities. So, and I think that isn't going to go away. I think it's just another way people can get into shape without just pumping iron. And so, if you're going to look at the age demographic in our community, it is middle-aged, and it is the thing that people are actively doing because sometimes they don't want to be set into a time block-out period where they can't go. A lot of people want to be able to do things after work, before work, on their lunch breaks, whichever, right? So this is one of those activities that they can do at any given time. So maybe if there is potential for expansion on the community center, it would be for a gym-related room.
Yeah, I think
Whether it is for Taekwondo, karate, MMA, whichever, right? With all multi-use room, instead of just another bigger weightlifting gym.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a topic that we will be discussing more in detail. I just wanted to kind of clarify with you, is that what you would be looking for can we try and ask staff to include those types of utilization with our rec plan? That'd be Councilor Norbury?
Yeah, I mean, all I'm really looking for is just some data that can guide us in our decision making, right? Like I know I have my view of this, 100-sided issue, and I'd just like to have make a better informed decision. That's all,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
And for me, I like things that I can look at, and I like to see utilized, underutilized. Right now, if staff says that they believe they might be able, it's either simple or crazy. Well, let's see if it's simple first, and then go down that line.
That
so
information
rather
adds
than
to an informed decision, right? Absolutely.
and if we don't need to spend the money, then great.
Absolutely. Okay, and then just continuing with you, Councilor Norbury, the facilitation of nonprofit groups. I was, and in regards to quarterly meetings, I want to move forward on this, and I think it's only going to benefit us all in the long run to bring all of our nonprofit groups together for one single meeting. It'll not only organize us all, but it'll also give opportunity for networking between the groups, as well as organization, to make sure that nobody's stepping on each other's toes. If there is an event coming, can another nonprofit group join? There's opportunities for that incredibly. So I'm going to be moving forward on a quarterly meeting in March, and I'm going to facilitate it to begin with, because I think it's important that we get all of our nonprofit groups together as one. It's happened in the past. And, Mr. Wall.
Just a couple of questions. If you want to move forward with facilitating, it's no problem. But if you want to, you could move forward with developing a policy that could have funds or maybe staff time available for you to access if you want to have this sort of event catered or anything like that. You can go down that path, request a policy which would have funds available for you to do those sorts of things. Otherwise, you'll need a council motion every time you want to do one to do it, and that goes with booking the rooms as well. So a policy might be a good way to go about that.
Okay. Okay, so that's basically all that you had under strategic planning at the moment. Council Majinski, you had mentioned, like to see a continuance of the grant writer position.
Yes.
So I wasn't able to follow up on this. Do we have a grant writer at the moment? Try, Trent. How are you? Excellent.
But
So-
that's, we need to have discussions about where the chamber's going with that now and everything.
So
So the
that-
grant writer position will continue. We have it funded from NDIT every year. Normally it has gone out on a contract basis. Last year council, or this year, sorry, 2019, last year council directed that it be included in the chamber's fee for service. So we haven't had discussions with the chamber on their new reality and where they want to go. So,
Okay, so.
but the grant writer position will always be there.
But at the current time, it's through the chamber.
That's correct.
Okay. Councillor Howard?
Yeah, just maybe a little more clarification on that from Mr. Wall. I'm not fully, so we apply for a grant from NDIT, they specifically for a full-time grant writer at the district? Is that how?
It's a part-time community grant writer. So they provide, I believe, $30,000 a year for wages for a community grant writer, and that allows any nonprofit group to work with that grant writer to assist them in finding, writing, and submitting grant applications. The district also uses the grant writer for some of our grants. As we get into more technical grants, where you need engineering report, we do it in staff. We get our engineers to do it, but there are a number of grants. I believe Mr. Ernst was instrumental in us receiving the age-friendly assessment grant that we got. So we do use the grant writer as well.
Excellent. So that would be an opportunity to have the grant writer in a room with all of our nonprofits as well. Councillor Howard?
So who within the district do we have that like goes and looks for specific grants? Like I understand NDIT fairly well, but I assume that there's other groups out there and there's other branches of government that you can get grants from. Do we have anybody that's actively doing that? Because we had talked about this before, that sometimes this grant writer, brings in grants that are, what'd you guys get on that grant for the sewage lagoon? It's like $800,000 or something like that.
There's all kinds of grants out there
But what I'm getting at is it valuable enough
to have a
to
position.
have somebody on staff, or half position? Like, I hate the idea of adding more staff, don't get me wrong here, but
Now, I don't know the position of the grant writer, but wouldn't that fall under the grant writer's position to actively seek out grants?
Yeah, they do. When we come to the larger infrastructure grants that we are applying for, staff is aware of them. There's press releases that go out.
okay.
And stuff. The type of grants that the grant writer can access through the Metasoft grant database, which we pay for every year. There are some tangential municipality ones, but for most part it's for the nonprofits and the different more specific types of projects that are going on. So we have both the knowledge of staff when these grants are coming out from the provincial government, as well as we pay for a fairly extensive grant database that categorizes grants all across the country, from C to C, private, public, and everything in between.
So that's right. Just before you take on to that, just to continue on with that question there.
Go ahead.
So there is a member of staff that goes in, looks at this, and then like reports back to you on it, or is that part of your job, Mr. Wall, or is that I just don't know the process.
The Metasoft?
Yeah.
Metasoft is the grant writer.
So that would be Trent.
Yes.
So it is the job of the grant writer to actively seek out other grants.
Okay, so for instance, just the grant that Sarah brought into us, like how did that get
Because
so far down the road?
the ministry, like, I don't know, Trent, if you wouldn't mind if I ask you a question on this, were you aware of that grant that the Geopark was trying to access?
No, that one they did by themselves.
Can comment.
There's been a little bit of confusion around the grant writing position that, as Jordan says, we need to kind of sit down and talk about
Okay,
sort of moving forward.
okay. Yeah, we can definitely do that. So as far as I understand with the Geopark grant was the province contacted the Geopark to look into this. So it was directly, the province directly contacted them.
And staff knew about that grant as well. We were preparing a submission to council to have the rural internet project funded through that grant. So council gave direction to go with the museum project, so we're going that way. But luckily enough, we were able to find another grant to cover the funds that that grant would have covered for the high speed
internet
internet, not rural internet, the high speed internet project. So there was no harm, no foul on that one, but got lucky.
Councilor Majinski.
And when I did mention this in the last meeting here, I thought it would be a good idea to have a list or somewhere to find that database of grants so that people don't step on each other's toes from the various nonprofits.
Well, and that's the reason for that quarterly meeting too.
Yeah, and I thought that was important to have, so then people can actually go on there and see what they can actually apply for and what they're eligible for, because
There's lots. There's tons
hundreds.
of, yeah.
And that would be really beneficial, just because, say, we do apply twice, not unknowingly, we might just cancel ourselves out.
Absolutely.
And that does happen.
And
so-
that's part of having those quarterly meetings to get organized and get everybody in touch with the grant writer, basically. Councilor Norbury, did you have a comment?
I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, that's where we're going with that. And we all know what's going on with the biking situation right now. Very exciting. I'll skip over mine because that has, I've got a list of a dozen things right now. Councilor Lehman likes the ideas of the trails and wishes to see the community center being used in the summer. We can definitely revisit that at another time. Councillor Howe, you had the community center usage in the summer as well. Upper decking the curling rink, so I believe, is it the next council meeting that is coming up for?
That's been done. It's in the
It's in the
budget, so
works.
the next time you'll see it is in. It's not in the works, but it's been approved to go into the budget discussions with the value. So the next time you'll see that is in your capital and special projects budget.
Okay, and that's basically for the initial engineering.
That's right.
Okay,
And then possibly the funds will be there as well for a tender construction should the engineering prove out and council wants to move forward.
okay. And then you had on there focus on improvement of healthcare services. We have a meeting with Northern Health Wednesday evening. Mental health services. That's been a big focus of mine right from the get-go. On that. So this is what I've got in my head so far on this is I want to initiate the process of putting together a mental health and addictions support society here in Tumbler Ridge with its own board. The reason for going for a society is better access to grants through the nonprofit. And in my end goal with that society is to find funding to fund a group session with the counselor for all types of mental health, trauma. It's a win-win situation. I've got 3 people that are interested already in becoming board members, and it's a lack of need. It's a lack thereof all over the country, and I think by setting this path, it'll be groundbreaking for mental health support. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment. Continuance of asset management plan. Obviously, our employee is coming back from maternity leave shortly that was looking after asset management. So I think that's definitely a focus that is going to continue on in the future. And rural land development, is there any update on that application province, Mr. Wall?
Just waiting to hear back from them. They've asked us for some more information. We've given it to them. It's just waiting right now.
at what part are we in the process at the moment?
Well, we've submitted the purchase application. So they came back and asked us for subdivision plans. So we gave them some subdivision plans. It's nothing we have to stick to. They just wanted to make sure that we know, we've got an idea of what we want to do. So those have been submitted to them. Where they are in their process, they're obviously checking through it at this point. They're going to have to at some point go to First Nations consultation, which I don't believe has started yet. So it's just waiting for them to move forward.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor House.
I think we identified 2 pieces of property, one right in the town and then one further out in the Bull Moose area.
Right.
And so those were the 2 areas that we kind of submitted to the government to say, these are the 2 areas we're interested in for 2 different things. One is kind of smaller lots that would likely be serviced with water and sewer. Didn't have to be, but could be. Whereas that spot out in the other area would not be. It would be like cistern or well or
Yep.
septic field or whatever would have to be done out there, right?
So just to ask for an update, did we've applied for both of those parcels with the provincial government? Okay.
Sit and wait and move now.
Councillor Norbury.
I'd like to discuss the mental health society. I can wait till after you're finished.
No, we're on that track still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's a great idea. I mean, you know, I would like to see the building healthy communities be utilized in that. I mean, it's your prerogative, right, for both of these societies. But there's already a society here, you know, and if we're talking about community health.
No, not to that degree. No. There's a committee. The Building Healthy Communities is a committee. It's not a society. So if you went to the provincial government and asked for a grant for a committee to put on, it's a lot different than asking as a society. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. I guess my thoughts are that this committee has applied and received grants before, and it's, you know, rather than reinvent the wheel, trying to utilize a vehicle that's already there. But
No, I definitely see the benefit of including that committee in this process. Like, this is very preliminary, of course. But there is definitely coincide with that committee, most definitely.
but through a
Councillor Norbury.
but through a society, there can be more opportunities for development and grants. Fair enough. I understand.
Yeah. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Would it be possible to turn that into a society and then have the addition of a mental health and wellness counselor added to that as a board and expand on it instead of having 2 different ones that would
I
maybe
think-
have some conflicts in and have asking for grants and
I think they have 2 different mandates. If you think of that committee, Building Healthy Communities Committee is looking at a scope, not just with mental health, it's looking at a scope of lifestyle, it's looking at a scope of active living. You know, the scope of that committee is a lot broader than specifically mental health and addiction support. And realistically, that support is underfunded Canada-wide. And I really call it the next epidemic because it's just under-supported.
the one I hear a lot of is mental health and wellness counselors, and that's what I think would tie in a lot of that.
100%.
Because then that is the activity side of it, and it could be the addiction.
But those are the counselors that we need to try and attract to come to Tumbler Ridge to have a meeting. Right now,
Because I wonder if they could have them, and
we don't
could
have
a
them.
society for them to be utilized in.
We don't, number one, there's not enough of them in the country. Number two, we live in Tumbler Ridge, very remote. So the reason for the society is to gain access to resources to facilitate bringing in a counselor. Counselor Norbert.
And you know, like hearing your explanation, I mean, this is like every problem. There's multiple avenues of attack, so to speak, right? So you know, if the society is more on a direct dealing with the patients, and then the other ways that the Building Healthy Communities Society can do would be something more of a, something different, right? We can still approach the issue in a different way. I mean, for me, like I want to get involved, I want to help, but just we'll focus it on a different way.
I
That's
think
all,
the
yeah.
mandates are different, and like the committee is definitely on a broader scale than the society would be. I think the society could branch on a lot of different levels as far as mental health goes, but on a Northern Health scope, mental health is not supported enough, and I think this could become groundbreaking in the fact that we could provide or help provide support services for a number of our residents. And the reason I want to go society-wise too is because you could look into a correlation with the ESS, the Emergency Social Services, and access resources through ESS for our first responders as well. When our first responders have a debrief, they don't have, or correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they have a proper debrief with a counselor. They have a debrief with themselves, but that's sometimes not enough. And that would only help access resources for our first responders as well. So like you said, with the Building Healthy Communities Committee, that correlates, but it also can correlate with ESS, so that we're all working on a single goal of supporting our residents that have those issues. And I think it's going to be very important moving on in the future. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Councillor Howell.
So, I mean, great that you guys are picking something out and focusing in on it. But to me, I think I'd rather wait for us to have our meeting with Northern Health and have them explain to us what they're going to do to help us with mental health issues in town. I don't quite get at all where you guys are going with this. I don't know where this came about, but this was definitely not when we're talking about
Totally different.
strategic planning here.
Nope.
This is not what I was talking about at all.
Totally different as far as, this is just an aspect that I'm looking into through mental health, but through the task force that you will be sitting on with Northern Health and Chief of Staff and I think 3 counselors, that has a different mandate. That's going after and retaining and attracting medical professionals, right?
Yep.
And that's what we're going to talk to. Like, we can talk about mental health to them, but I don't see cows falling from the sky, and I don't see 3 counselors on call for Tumbler Ridge. Those resources aren't available to Northern Health, let alone available to Tumbler Ridge as far as the mental health side of things goes.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm working on a side basis there.
And just to kind of stick with the improvement to healthcare services and stuff, like, there's only so much we can do as a council, right? But we can definitely throw out some suggestions or ideas. And I just want the rest of council to know, like, where my head is with this and what my thought is. And, like, it's not like we can go in and say to any doctor or any nurse or anything, we're going to give you a bonus or we're going to give you this. Or we can come up with suggestions to Northern Health to say this is what we may possibly be able to bring back to council to see if they'd go for. But if we're truly serious about making healthcare a major priority for Tumbler Ridge, I think there's avenues in here that we can do things to try to recruit doctors and to help Northern Health. Northern Health is going to offer package A, and that's as far as they can go. They can offer package A in Tumbler, Chetwynd, Dawson. It's the same package. And we say, that's great. Here's the option that Tumbler Ridge is going to put on the table along with your option A.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking to do, just so you guys know that, I can't speak for all the council, but that's what my idea is. And
that's really going to be the focus of the task force, is to come up with those kind of recommendations and bring back to council.
Sure.
And I did become aware of I believe it's a committee, I got to double check that, but in Fort St. John, they have the exact same thing. And they're looking for incentives of how can we retain medical professionals, whether it be subsidized housing, whether it be, all sorts of different things. So we have to look you and I both have to look at that program a little deeper to see, and it'll give us a clearer picture and path on where the task force can go. So we'll follow up on that, Councillor Howell. As far as strategic planning goes, that's what we've got at the moment. Does anyone want to add any other discussion to the strategic planning? Unfortunately, we're missing 3 of our members, so it's this is what we have at the moment for strategic planning. But like I said, in the future, this meeting is really going to be focused on these types of discussions. You know, it's really going to hinder, the success of it is going to depend on us as a council as a whole to bring these items for discussion to the next strategic planning meeting, not PNP. Councillor Norbury.
I think just and my comments are more around flow. If we're looking at specific items, at wish list items, so to speak, just so that we can get a grasp of what we're going to be talking about in a given week, right? Like seeing strategic planning, like can we like expand upon that a little bit? Like we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that, just so we can
100%.
Just be a little more prepared in terms of
Absolutely.
we can bring up ideas and I guess that's my only ask moving forward is that we, rather than just read from the minutes, like, hey, we're going to talk about these 10 things, and we can just become prepared, because
Yes.
I think what we can do is we can use this time as a great brainstorming, and we can utilize each other's strengths on
And that's
what we're talking about. Yeah.
and that's going to depend on us as a whole to bring these items for discussion either to myself or to Jordan to put on the agenda in due time that we can get information out so that we are informed to talk about it too, right? Absolutely, and that's really the focus of this change of path of this meeting is really to focus on strategic planning, because this is our opportunity to discuss openly about these kinds of plans, and it's only going to help us run to become informed and organized. So absolutely. Any other questions or items? Okay, moving on to 8.2 Geopark grant. So just an update on this grant. I had a surprise visit to the museum's special board meeting on Thursday, and I wasn't aware, but Sarah with the Geopark was presenting to the museum this grant idea, and so we had Councillor Kirkauka, myself, Sarah, and Roxanne presenting to the new museum board, and so they presented, and then we left and let the board discuss amongst themselves, and then we had a follow-up meeting on the Friday with Jordan, Steve Torrey representing the museum, Sarah and Daryl as well, and basically the museum was in support of working together and going for this grant. I think the grant has been focused into a geo museum gallery with possible expansion for the PRC aspect of it. And at that meeting on Friday, it was clarified that if the district is heading this application, that it's going to become a district-owned building, and throughout the construction phase of that building, if successful, of course, it will be council, or it will be staff, District of Tumbler Ridge led. Final decision in any conflict would be the decision of Mr. Walls, because it is going to be District of Tumbler Ridge building. Of course, there's going to be collaboration with the museum and geopark of what's the meat and potatoes is going to be, of course. But just so we're all aware that because we are applying for this grant, that we should take ownership of this project and building. What are your thoughts on that, Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think it's imperative that if we do go ahead and take ownership of the building, that the museum and the geopark are one. No longer two separate entities, too many acronyms to begin with, too many conflicts in different types of grant applications, funding, all that stuff as well.
I see what you're
But if
saying.
it says museum gallery, it's already said and done right there. And if that's
Yeah,
going to be
that's-
put down in place, then we have to have that in on our side as the prerequisite,
Absolutely, and
especially if we're going to be honest of the
And-
building.
believe me, that was, spitballing conceptual labeling on my part. That's not the direction. I'm not trying to influence the direction whatsoever. We have to apply for the grant first off, but I understand what you're saying completely, but I think we can address those concerns by having a clear MOU between the geopark and the museum. I see those two organizations as having a different mandate as well, and that's why I like the fact that they're split up. But having a very clear MOU between the two of them will avoid any conflicts, or hopefully any conflicts in the future. Councilor Majinski.
I'm actually glad that you brought up the MOU, because if we did get the funding for it and it does go through, geopark's all happy, museum's not, there's a falling out. It's going to be big issues and there'll be a lot of backlash throughout the community.
Absolutely.
Especially with that kind of a building sitting there half empty.
Absolutely.
So.
And
it has
that's
to
what
be
I've suggested to
100%
them.
collaboration.
That's what I've suggested to both of them on Friday was that MOU needs to be developed again. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, and I think I think having staff lead it is the best way to do it, because they're almost now at a moderator. Like they can listen to both sides, and it's it's going to be a tough job for staff. But thank you, staff, for taking that on and sort of being the intermediary, because
100%.
From preliminary talks, there's shooting for the moon right now, and we might be a little less, but having that in the middle mediator to say, well, we can have this and that. And the other thing is, and it's not geopark slanted or museum slanted. It's fairness down the middle, I think, is the right direction. But ultimately we have this big opportunity for a whole new facility, and we just need to keep everyone on focus on that.
Well, and to elaborate
Right.
on that too is both of those organizations were relieved that we are willing to take that on. I don't think either of them are prepared to try and build that kind of a building. It's not even feasible to comprehend, but luckily we have an incredible staff and CAO that is more than capable of developing that kind of project. Mr. Wall.
Thank you. And don't thank me too much, because the reality of this building is that there is not enough space to go around for what everybody wants. I mean, immediately on the first discussions, you can see it. There's not enough space.
Yep.
So those need to be decided, and it's going to be coming back to council, because this is a municipal building. What is the municipal strategic goal that you're here to figure out? And if you're hoping that you can get through this without picking a winner and loser, you can't. There's no splitting this down the middle. This is the story of cutting a baby in half, right? There's going to be people who are happy and people who are unhappy at the end of these decisions, because there's the geopark and what they want that building for. They're not going to have enough space to do everything. There's the museum and what they want that building for, they're not gonna have enough space for it. And then there's also the community needs that we may want to have in it. There's been talk about a movie theater or whatever it happens to be. So there are very serious space constraints that need to be decided by council, if successful, need to be decided by council on what is your strategic goal for this building? What is the purpose it's going to serve?
Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, having said that, there's more decisions on that. Who runs the gallery? You know, is that Geo Center project, is that still a go?
It
You
is.
know, now, is that still gonna be functional if that new space is developed? What's gonna happen there? I'm just throwing out questions that I don't have the answer to. What's
There's-
happening with the elementary school? Are we gonna be running both of those now and taking on the costs of both the elementary school for the research side and then this for the display side? So those are just in this project, all the questions that we need to start walking down. And
There's major questions to be answered, yeah.
the other reason that I wanted this added to was just so council can start really taking a look at some of the prioritization that needs to happen on the building side of things, like building something new. We are looking at, you know, possibly a $14 million built geoscience center. The building envelopes around all of the buildings here, the expansions that we want on the community center, possibly things at the transfer station for recycling. If you think about the amount of buildings that have been built in this town over the last few years, we've already slated up for next year, you know, more construction that's been done in a long time. So council over the next while here, I think, is gonna have to really prioritize what is it that you guys want and when do you want it? Do you wanna try and push through with 5 new construction projects in 1 year? The more you add into any given year, the more you risk that things are gonna go wrong. I certainly wouldn't recommend it. I don't think that there's enough capacity in the region to do something like that. So if we have to start making choices, what's first? Is it the building envelopes? Is it the community center? Is it recycling? Is it this geoscience center? What is it that council has as their priorities? I'm not saying you have to answer it today, but I think those discussions need to start taking place so we can form our budget for next year.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask council to think about those types of priorities and try in your heads, try to, like we're coming up to budget season, so we're gonna have to try and prioritize all of these things. But the beauty of the GeoPark grant is we don't find out till September, but we also have 8 years to use that grant as well. So there is going to be some opportunities in the near future within like the next 2 years to get caught up on the big ticket items that we have this year before we really get into the meat and potatoes if we are successful on that. Councillor Howell.
Yeah, and it's a lot of if, ands, buts, and maybes, and might happen. But what Mr. Wall just commented on was 5 building projects if all of the stuff were to happen. Pretty sure we're not going to get all the stuff that we want.
No, and we do need to, like, don't get me wrong, all of these ideas are fantastic ideas, but we also need to strategically plan them so that we're not having 5 construction things happening at the same season too. Right? So, Councillor Norbury.
Yeah, that's the purpose of our first year here is to, you know, this is what we want, and let's start chopping them off, right?
Yep.
You know, and you know, but if we don't bring them up now, if we don't discuss them now, then we won't, we can't. We'll lose that opportunity for what we feel is in the best needs of our community, right?
For sure.
So, you know, I'm totally for, you know, we need to prioritize, and you know, if we have 3 whatever number of things and we say this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, even if we don't get to 3 or 4, you know, but
It is definitely a discussion that we're going to need to make in the future, in the nearer future, and I think we can start discussing that during the budget season as well. Councillor Howell.
So then, you know, the whole new building concept, it sounds great on the surface, what Sarah had brought in here. I thought, unlike what Mr. Wall is painting this picture of, I thought this was going to be something that both the Geopark and the museum would both look at and say, this is fantastic. This is a purpose-built building like they've asked for. We just built a visitor information center that the Geopark generally has the entire use of that thing, and that's already their staging ground. If they needed to utilize another 25% of this building and we need to have another 40% or 50% for the geopark and then 25% for public use or whatever, I think that balance can be struck.
Yep.
And, at the end of the day, I think the thought process that I'm most concerned about is the ongoing costs to the district of Tumbler Ridge for the next 25 years for that building.
For sure.
So that being said, we generally provide the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation, on average, spend about $200,000 a year. They, correct me if I'm wrong, pay the heat and lights on the building up there for us.
Yep.
To make sure that, the security on the building, the pipes aren't breaking, whatever, for $200,000 a year, and they provide that service that we have up there. If that service were to change and leave that building and go down here, I've asked for those numbers lots of what would it cost us just to have that building on our own. If they were not in there, if a purpose-built building came and it was over there, what does it cost us to have that building? What does it cost the district of Tumbler Ridge to anyways have to put heat in there, have to put power there? Would it be $30,000 a year just to have that building? But to me, I think the biggest conversation to have is this split between the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation and the PRPRC,
Correct.
right? So at that point there, if this purpose-built building was to be built, is there going to be room in this purpose-built building for a research facility?
No.
And how do we know that already?
Because the funds allocated to this project
Doesn't allow for that.
doesn't allow. Well, no, the amount just isn't there.
That's where it comes into where I was saying that it won't satisfy everybody's needs. I mean, that email that we saw before was already talking about the need not to give up the elementary school, and this is an addition onto it. And one of the other things for what you're talking about, the yearly costs, we've been supplying the $200,000 to the museum, but that building has incurred some very significant depreciation and aging. So we're going to get an assessment done on it this year and what's the cost of it. So, a $14 million building, that'll be pretty much the most expensive building in town next to the community center. So if you take a $14 million building and take a 35-year depreciation amount, which is a fairly long amount of time, that's $400,000 a year. That needs to be allocated into your operating budgets. If we want to go down this path that we've talked about before, where we're starting to replace, we're taking a fiscal expense for our depreciation and putting it into a bank, so when things come due, we're able to replace them. That's an increase to the operating budget of $400,000 a year
So that we have replacement costs of this building
when it's done.
35 years down the road.
You're budgeting that.
Do we have to put that in?
No.
No.
So
It's
we got the grant. If we were successful and got the grant for it, perhaps we get the grant again in 35 years. If
Yeah.
we don't, the building's gone in 35 years.
well,
The council of the day decides.
yeah, and we're not getting rid of the community center.
No.
We refurbished it, so that budgeted amount of depreciation to go over the 35-year lifetime is to basically refurbish it. I don't think you're gonna build it and plan on knocking it down after 35 years. I don't think we have any plans of knocking the community center down, but yeah, it's basically fiscally responsible to allocate funds for replacement costs, but that's a choice that we have. Obviously, there's questions at hand that we'll find out in September if we are successful, so that's definitely going to be another. Councillor Howell.
I mean, it's great for us to sit here and wish and hope and say, man, this would be fantastic if this happens. But along that lines, if it did ever happen, to me, I think we would be at a crossroads with the provincial government where they would have to then come in and help us with, maybe this is who's to say that building couldn't go to the PRPRC and they couldn't continue to do, and they could then expand what they want to do up there and expand around the province, provided the province steps in and we say, hey, province, here's a building for you. We want $500,000 for it, or I don't know, right?
It's an action item that I need to go with is getting the province on board with fossil protection. Councillor Norbert.
Yeah, and I think if going down into the future, I mean, this is still really preliminary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we haven't even got the money, we haven't even got
Not
approved
yet,
yet, but
no.
but for the benefits of splitting the museum and the research side of it, well, the Peace Regional District we wanted the separation. We wanted to just pay for the museum. We just want to pay for the gallery, right? And the PRD paid for the science side of it. Sorry.
So far.
So this creates more separation and another way that we can go to the provincial government saying, hey, we're willing to provide what our residents need and what they'll use. Here's, where we want you to kick in the money,
absolutely.
right? And, so the hope and dream is that if it does stay up in that building, it's self-contained, it supports the museum through its research, but we can be hands-off as much as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, the Museum Foundation thinks of Claude Galbo as a huge benefit and resource for the research side of it, because we all seen how much space is needed for those collections, and the space is an envy of every museum in the province. Royal BC Museum in Victoria doesn't have the space. If Royal BC was to take over our fossils tomorrow, they wouldn't know what to do with them because they don't have the space in Victoria to hold them. So that is something that we are going to have to revisit in the future, but realistically we need to figure out if we're successful on this grant before we move forward on any other ideas, really. But, that's kind of where we're at with it as well. Do you have any kind of progress, or have you started on this grant at all, Mr. Wolf?
I'll be meeting with Ms. Walters to go forward. She's got the grant and all the information ready to go. There won't be too much municipal involvement in it until we hear back on whether or not we're successful, and then it'll be coming back to council, and we'll figure out what the building looks like. Where is it going to go? When is it going to be constructed?
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of decisions there for sure. Okay, any other discussion in regards to that grant? Okay, moving on to 8.3, Grizzfest. So I wanted to bring this back for discussion because everybody knows government works very slowly on perception on the outside. And we've kind of drug our heels into January now without a decision where Grizzfest really needs to start working on this in November to make it successful. So I think we really need to talk about this and decide our level of support. Are we in support or are we not? Because Grizzfest is stuck in a drain right now and they're going down. So we need to open the discussion for this. Councillor Norbury.
I think the best way to start off is at a council meeting, let's just come up with a number. Oh, well, I guess it's coming up in capital, right? But the best way, I think we're all sort of just we're trying to feel each other out where we want to feel with it. And I think we just need to have a number in front of us. And okay, the number is last year's commitment of $90,000. Let's discuss it. Let's vote on it. Good, bad, move on, right? And we just, because
well, realistically, we would have to start with their ask level, and if that gets voted down, we can make another motion. But I'm feeling the responsibility to phone the TRD Society and let them know that council is in support to some degree. Maybe not in full support of their ask, but they need to know if they can move forward or if they need to rebrand and redevelop an entirely different event. Councillor Hall.
So I thought we've had the discussion. Okay, maybe I think that's the meeting that you weren't here for, Mayor Bertrand. But the
Last delegation.
yeah, we had the discussion during that meeting, and there, and I threw the number out. I said, I could support what we did last year, and they basically said that they can't do it for the money that they had last year. They need the amount that they came in for, and we all said, sorry, that's $150,000 is too much money. So in my mind, this is one of those tough things where you got to make a stand. You got to say one way or the other which way you're going with it. And we've opened the opportunity to them again and say, listen, guys, 150 is not going to happen. It's not looking like 150 is going to happen right now. Can you do it on less budget? And they came in and said, wow, we could shorten to a day, but you're going to miss out on this and this and this, to try to build their case of why they wanted 150 again. I put a number out, like they asked, we talked about this, and you guys can attest to that.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, my number is this. I don't want to go over what we did last year.
I seen the video for sure. I didn't see a clear direction by council to the delegation of, yes, we will support you. So that's kind of what we need to decide this evening, so that I can phone TRD Society and say, go ahead and move forward, or reinvent the wheel. Mr. Norbury.
If what you're saying is, for right now, if you want a commitment from us on an individual basis, I'm in full support of GrisFest in the amount that they want.
Okay.
If that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I am. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. When they came in as a delegation, my understanding is they're to come in to propose to us maybe
Alternative options.
Alternative
It says
options.
right in the notes, yeah.
There was none of that.
No.
They said they did nothing wrong, and I had a problem with that because it wasn't just $40,000 they lost. They lost the money that we supported them with as well, which isn't part of that fund. So that's a lot more money.
And that's why I wanted to
asked.
bring this, that's why I wanted to bring this back to the table tonight, because I revisited the ask that we did originally on the delegation. The delegation was, or the ask was, to come back as a delegation and provide us alternative options.
None of that.
And in that video, correct me if I'm wrong, there were no alternative options. So I think we need to discuss this to have a clear path so we can move forward on it. Councilor.
And so when we went around and they pled their case and over again, I decided to come up with something off the top of my head as a deliverable to offer them, which was to see if they could come up with what other communities do. Grand Prairie, the Crystal Center, Canada Center, and Dawson Creek, whatever's in Prince George,
Yeah.
and see if they could slim it down to a few bands. And then they laughed in my face about it. And it was like,
Because
no, because
I-
it was a grand band, but it doesn't have to be a grand band. This isn't, we don't have the population base for it. And so I wasn't even able to explain myself fully, saying that why do we need to have 12 bands here, 10 bands, when you could maybe slim it down a bit. But they don't have to be 30-year-old bands that have been known and well, and and yeah, they do have followings. They do have people that come for them, but we don't need to spend $250,000 on a band with their two opening acts.
Yeah.
And that's all I asked for them, and maybe they'll come back to us
I
with
think
that. But
I did see that reaction you're talking about, and I think that reaction came from because those types of centers deal with a different kind of budget than what they
Exactly,
do. Right?
and that's where I was coming from there, is
And
the
I also-
budgeting price.
I also
How
did
many
some
people do we get?
follow-up with Mayor Bumstead in Dawson. And the process with them is they have a company that looks after the Incan Event Center for them. And basically what he said was they bid on bands. And if they are successful on their bid, then the band tells them when they're going to come. They don't actively seek out like we do, or GrisFest does. They don't actively seek out a band and tell them we need you for August 2nd and 3rd. They actually bid on the band, and the band tells them when they're going to be there according to their tour. So as far as trying to set out the weekend and blanket shut that weekend down, I don't think they have the capability of doing that. The one capability they do have, though, is they have statistics on who and from where attended that Alabama show last year, so that we can see what level of Grand Prairie came to that, what level did we miss out on, was it a factor or was it not a factor? They have those statistics, so I've reached out to them to try and provide us with that. Councillor Norbert.
I think one of the issues is that their funding cycle just doesn't align with ours. I understand that they want their money in, they need commitments in November, but the simple fact of the matter is ours doesn't, we don't make decisions until February, March, April, And
So it's almost at the point where we have to look a year into the future.
something like, and that's, I don't think that's on us, right? Like that's, we're not here to manage the TRD Society. The TRD Society, you know, this is I'd like to put the challenge to them on how can we get out of this repetitive cycle, because you know we've been witnessing it for the last X years, you know, and I think we need some creative outside the box thinking on how we can break this cycle of they want commitments in November. Well, you know, we respect TRD Society. We know what they want, but at the same time, we also have, you know, we have a whole municipality to run, you know, and you know, that's my question to them is, you know, how can we overcome this repetitive issue?
It's
You
a
know?
vicious cycle, and it's not just with TRD Society, it's with all of our nonprofits coming to us every single year, not wasting staff time, but taking up staff time to do these grants every single year for each society, not knowing if they're going to be able to continue the next year is total uncertainty, and it's absurdity too. So I totally agree with you that we need to get into a situation where we can streamline this, but we really have to get to the point of, are we in favor of supporting this event or not? And that's kind of where the direction I'm looking for tonight, Mr. Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. My fear is they've gone in the hole every year, year after year.
Last 3 years, yeah.
If you're gonna base this off of a business model, you're out of business. And that's the way I look at it, is they're getting handouts, they're getting bailouts. And it hurts me because my personal business, I get benefits from them as well. Just like every other one that and it was a good plead for them, like saying that they have impacts on the community, but overall, I don't know if it's huge.
So I like the fact that they did bring in the fact that they have impacted the business community in Tumbler Ridge, but I don't like the fact that we don't have hard statistics. I don't
Exactly.
have a dollar value of how much Grizzfest or that weekend produces for our community. So that's another thing that I'd like to bring as a notice of motion, is for an economic impact study be done for that weekend. So realistically, like, we can get the history on what each business has bumped up on that weekend and come up with a roundabout number, but realistically, to do a proper study, it would have to be done at this year's event if it was to go forward. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. My other ask was, how many ticket sales do you have? How many people do you bring in?
didn't know.
They didn't answer, they didn't even know. And that scares me, because that's where you're gonna generally know how many or what type of band you're gonna bring in.
Yeah.
If it's gonna be an $80,000 band,
I-
$250,000 band, because if you're only bringing in 800 ticket sales, you're not gonna be able to afford a $150,000 band.
I wasn't-
along with everything else that goes on with that.
I wasn't impressed with that at all watching that, and I took from that inexperience, because that board is new and inexperienced, but you know, I'm sure they have that statistic, just probably wasn't with them. Probably caught them by surprise on that one. Councillor Howell and Councillor Majinski.
So just so I'm clear, Councillor Norbury, you said you fully support Grizzfest, right?
Yes.
So with the $150,000 ask?
In support, yes. Councillor Norbury.
Yes.
So basically, I'd like to, I think I see the will of council that we are in support of supporting this event. We just need to work out numbers. Am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Councillor Howe?
I mean, it's been stated, I think, in previous council meetings, that we do support the event, but not to the tune of what they asked for. I didn't
the level.
understand that Councillor Norbury supported them to the tune of $150,000.
Well, it may not have been at either of the delegations that was brought forward, but it, you know, like over that time period to think about it more, maybe his decision has been made to support. But what I'd like to see is a consensual yes or no support. I don't want to see a dollar value, but I would like to make a notice of motion for an economic impact study be done on Grizzfest weekend. Because I think if we go ahead and support it this year, whatever the numbers come out as, if they lose or if they profit, that's for another discussion later on. But I think we need to get some hard statistics on what impact it has on our community and our business community, so that we can justify investing taxpayer money into a 2-day event or 3-day event. Does that make sense to everybody? And to what I just found out today was not one economic impact study has ever been done in Tumbler Ridge, and I'm beyond shocked by that. Beyond. So I don't know if it took an accountant to become in this position or not, but these are very, very important to justify the decisions that we make with taxpayer money. Councilor Norbert.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. But I think going to Grizzfest, I know they want an answer, they want a dollar number, but I don't think we can give them anything.
Not tonight.
You know,
no.
nothing specific, and that's what they want is specific. You know, like there are multiple sides to numbers, and I think we'd be doing them a disservice to say, hey, we're in favor of this, because what if they go out and they book $150,000 in bands, or they only go 100? I mean, either think we need to have a special meeting of council, we need to make a decision. We just need to make a decision and give it to them, rather than say, well, we're in support, and then we'll leave the vagueness up to them. I think we need to have a serious number, so we either need to decide to have a special budget meeting, or we just wait out until the budget decision and make the decision
The
then.
vagueness is only because we're discussing this in this type of a meeting. I think I can accommodate our tone as far as the level of service or level of funding that we're looking at, but realistically, Grizzfest TR Day Society is sitting in their chairs right now, answering the phone to a number of different, like I can't even comprehend all of their planning, but I don't know yet. I don't know if this is going to happen. This is January 14th. They should have already had half of the event planned by now. So this is where we need to kind of move forward. And I agree with you, a special council meeting probably is in order for this. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. If they're not turning a profit from the previous years to kickstart them for the next year, are we going to be in the same boat next year? That will be very disheartening that we gave them $100,000 and then maybe that $50,000 would help them out the next year just because they broke even. So there is two sides of that coin, but I
agree with you on that. Absolutely.
like it's frustrating to
100%
but
agree.
I could throw a number at you right now and
Well, that's the thing is we can't decide the level of support that we are going to, but if we all are in agreements that we are willing to support this event to some degree, I think I can pass that on to Grizzfest to say go ahead and move forward. Maybe not to the level that you were hoping to. Don't shoot for the moons this year, but you can move forward with some of your planning. Does everybody understand where I'm going with that? Councillor Howe?
No, I don't. How is that any different than the previous meeting that we had? This is the exact same thing that we talked
There
about.
was absolutely nothing decided at the previous meeting.
There's nothing decided here either, though.
To some degree,
Like what, that we support you? Like,
yes.
I think that was evident in my mind that
It wasn't told to them, though.
if they weren't here when we said it, I don't know, but.
But it really wasn't told. You came up with a dollar number during a delegation, but that wasn't voted on. That wasn't majority level of support. So really, they don't have any clear direction. They really don't. So that's.
I thought the
reasoning.
clear direction was that everyone on council supported them. We support the idea of it, but it was just to different degrees.
Yeah.
And I, until today, I did not think that anybody supported the $150,000.
Yeah, so,
Maybe Joanne, maybe Councilor Kirby, but
yeah, so we really haven't had that meat and potatoes discussion yet. And I hope to see it in the next budget meeting for sure. But realistically, like, I'm expected to contact TRD Society, but I didn't really know what to tell them because I watched the last meeting and it was very indecisive. Very indecisive. So that's the reason for this discussion. Councillor Norbury.
And realistically, until we as a council decide the level that we want to give, we can't, I think it's irresponsible to give them, any idea, like we're putting the cart before the horse and we're making promises that we don't even know if we can keep, right? Like, I understand my position. I understand multiple other councillors' positions. And until there's news, there's no news,
Yeah, but I don't want to leave them in the dark either. So, I mean, if we are in agreements that all of council is in support and it comes down to a dollar value, we can work out that dollar value. But in the meantime, they can continue planning for this event to happen. I think the actual idea of this event not happening is still on their mind. I don't think they're moving forward with planning. Councilor Majinski.
I just wanted to ask a question, and that is can Grizzfest plan, based on what you're telling me? Because my understanding of the meeting was that they can't plan unless they get the full amount.
Well, and that's something for them to tell me when I contact them. But I can't contact them and tell them I don't know yet. That's not what I'm looking for. Councillor Howell, did you have
yeah, just that we did make a decision. The decision that was reached is that we weren't going to support the $150,000 level. That decision was reached.
Okay.
And they never came back with anything, to say, well, if we did 125, we could give you this. If we did 80, we could give you 1 day. We could one wicked that, and what Councillor Brzezinski asked them is critical. Is he said to them, well, we give you $150,000 now and you lost $50,000 last year. Does next year you come in, you lose $50,000 again, and now you need $200,000. At what point do we say enough is enough for 1 weekend, a 1 weekend party? $150,000 for 1 weekend party doesn't justify it to me.
But that's why we also need to have this economic impact study to give us some hard statistics on what it does benefit. We can always say it benefits our local businesses, but to what degree? To what level? $100,000? $200,000? If that weekend upticks all of our businesses in town by $300,000, that changes your perspective on an investment of $150,000.
Sure.
Don't you think?
For sure.
Yeah.
But they can't even tell you the numbers of people that attended the concert.
No.
I'm
I'm not asking. I wouldn't be asking Grizzfest to do this stuff.
No, and I get that, but I mean that's a very basic thing. That's knowing what your revenue is.
Yeah.
That you brought 500. You sold 500 tickets. You could assume that even if all of them were out of town people, which they aren't, some of them are in town people.
Yeah.
But if you had 500 people and those 500 people spend $1,000, okay, you've got $500,000 spent in the community.
Yeah.
There, you can get a reasonable expectation of how much money is spent.
Sure.
Sure.
Councilor Majinski.
Mr. Wall and Mr. Howe, Councilor Howe said it properly.
It's okay.
Sorry.
No,
Come back. Happens to me all the time, buddy.
You said it and then I had something to it. Sorry.
Just one quick
Mr.
thing here.
Wall.
This isn't scheduled to come up for council decision until late February. Like that's when
This funding,
the
the grant and aid.
Grant and aid operating decisions don't come in the regular grant schedule until the February meetings, which is at the end of February.
And never have, right?
It's always been that.
Always been that way. This Fest has managed to pull it off before, so.
Yeah.
So I just, because you had mentioned it'll be in the next budget meeting, which it can be, but you're gonna have to move it there. It won't come up there naturally.
That's kind of what I was afraid of, is even until that point, that definitely sets them up for failure if they don't have a clear decision. Councilor Norbury.
I think it comes back down to we need to move up their timeline faster rather than sooner rather than later. So I think we should make a decision to just move this to a special budget meeting, so that we can give them the answer. You know,
At what level of support?
at what level? You know, because I think there's a spectrum of ideas here, and I think we just need to start at a number and start working our way up, down, left, or right, because what everyone's comfortable with. Because we're just sort of going around in a circle, and you know, I respect everyone's opinions, but I think what they need is a concrete number. We're just giving, you know, we're giving them marshmallows, and they want concrete, right? So
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And the whole purpose of this discussion is really for me, clarity for me to be able to go to TRD Society and give them some kind of answer. Councilor
It
Majinski.
came back to me. Mr. Wall said, like, when we had the initial talk and we came up, they wanted the $150,000, and we said we weren't comfortable with that amount. They said they can't operate. That was cut dry, and then that's when we decided, well, we can't just give you a number to say yes or no with.
Right.
Say it was 75% of that amount.
Right.
It wasn't even a factor to them. It seemed like, and that's why we didn't go forward from there. And that's kind of why we're at a standstill. And why
Yeah, we're kind of in limbo at the moment, right?
And so we're in that same boat again now, and we should maybe come up with a concrete number and go from there, and have a deliverable on our end so that they can come up with something that they can actually answer those phone calls, whether they're going to either say yes or no.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
it's
no,
going
I,
to change everything who they're going to bring in.
yeah, no, I definitely like that idea, and I think I can hold off on that economic impact study motion until that time as well. Okay, I think I'm a little clearer on that. Thank you for that discussion. Moving on to 8.4, snow removal policy and procedure. So I'd like to discuss this because there has been a lot of talk about it within council and on social media. And from what I understand at the moment is we only have a snow removal procedure. We don't actually have a policy. So I think that we need to bring this back to the next meeting to start developing a snow removal policy. This policy can include some kind of procedural ask, but I think what we need to decide tonight is if we want to increase the service that we provide on snow removal, if we want to decrease it, or if we want to keep it stagnant and as is, basically. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as far as snow removal, is to look on it on a policy level. I think we need to, and on that policy level, we can set out specific services that we are looking for, as far as overtime authorization on weekends possibly, or start times, looking at it on that level, and not so much on what side of the street we plow the snow to, or like that can be a discussion item, but I think we really need to move forward on bringing this item up on a policy level and developing a policy. Right at the moment, we have procedures that lists out emergency one level of clearing, and that's on a procedural level, but I want to start looking at a broader level on a policy level too. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some information that was given to council in 2014 is a great framework. I think it's good best practice. I'd just like to see an expansion on, and just have it clear on weekends, holidays, at evenings times, right? And
that comes from a policy level.
yeah, and that's why I think it's a good idea to move forward. It's more of so we can give to our residents, this is in stone now. You can expect this, snow, hail, or snowstorm. this is what you're going to get, right? And I think there's always going to be the naysayers, and they're always going to want more. But if you look at other communities, we have great snow removal. I would just like to have it clearly defined for everyone to know exactly how great it is and what to expect. Because if we know what to expect and we can transfer and we can pass it on to our residents, I think that'll disperse a lot of the issues we have every year.
Absolutely. Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. As long as we have a policy or even a set standard in place where we can give a concrete answer of, okay, it's no 6 inches, we don't have this out on the weekends to justify overtime. It'll be, like, as long as there's something that we can provide for the residents, and same with, like, we've had warm weather, freezing rain. Are they gonna be out sanding? Are they gonna be out putting salt down? Is it gonna be everywhere? Where do they go primarily first? So that if the residentials don't get done on the weekends, then they're not gonna walk their dogs on the sidewalks just because of safety. And there has to be guidelines for the safety of it as well as the actuality of it.
Yeah, and it's really our job to look at it on a policy level, and that's something that we can affect. Like, if any councillor wants to change something, we can't just go to a department head and ask them to change something. We need to look at it on this level, policy level, so that we give clear direction to our staff, and not on a procedural basis, but on a policy basis. What service are we wanting to provide our residents of Tumbler Ridge, basically? So, I'd like to make a motion for a report on our snow removal policy, on our snow removal procedure, and developing a policy. Does that make sense? Councillor Howe?
So I would like us to involve staff right off the get-go. I'd like to have like a round table and throw out some questions to staff. Sometimes these things can be headed off with staff if you're able to talk to them and say, here's a couple of the issues that I have heard from residents, that I've seen myself, that I don't understand why it went this way, why did this happen, why did that happen? And when you get to sit down with them and they give you the breakdown of why they did this way, why they did that way, and at the end of it, you may be able to say, is there anything we could give you or help you with to make it better? And that they come in and say, geez, if we just had a wing, or we just had a new plow truck, which we just bought 2 brand new plow trucks. Like if these things come in, they can make the service better for no more money, for no more labor, for no more anything. If you would allow us to have a split shift, we could do this. So to bring them into the conversation, to have that to me is where we start at.
But that's really the purpose of the report of the department heads too, because we're going to ask staff for a report on snow removal, right? Jordan's not going to do that report. His department head is going to do that report. That's an opportunity for that department head to give options on service level. So in a previous report, there was an option of clearing everybody's driveway, but in order to do that, we would need to add a loader and another equipment operator. It's going to cost this much for the loader, it's going to cost this much for the operator. If that's the service that council wants to provide, this is what it's going to cost. That's the service level that you can expect from doing that. You know what I mean? Like, we need to set the levels of service that we want to provide. So it's really, it's in those reports is the opportunity for those department heads to give options, give us ideas on how we can improve that service.
So don't have discussion with them, allow them to write out the report, and then we make the decision based strictly on the report that they put in front of us, instead of us having ideas that we could throw at them. You don't want us to do that.
But are those ideas on a procedural level or a policy?
I don't know what they're going to be on. They could be crazy, wild, off the cuff. Why do you do it like this? Why don't we do plowing at 4 a.m? If the department head hasn't put that in their report, bring them in. That's
a service that we can deal with on a policy level. The start times of that, how much snow falls on the on the streets before we authorize overtime on the weekends. That's something that we can look at on a policy level. Yes, Councilor Majinski.
We just have to set the direction where we're gonna go with that, and then they can give us the pros and cons of that. Say, we do want to do it 4 a.m. They'll say, oh, we can't because everybody wants to sleep.
Well, I can definitely, I'll add to that comment, Councilor Norbury.
So I guess to follow up to Councillor Howe's comment, it's more of a procedural thing. Like if we want information, we need to direct it to Mr. Wall, and then he talks to his department head, and they give us a report or information, right? Like I understand that. Yeah, I want to get the answer from the horse's mouth, but at the same time, the horse's mouth isn't our employee, right? The only person we can affect is our employee, right? So how can we get these specific answers? Like, and then do we just write up a list of, hey, Mr. Wall, these are some questions that I had regarding snow removal?
Sure.
You know, because I think we go back to we need to make decisions, we need to be informed, but what's the vehicle for answering these questions?
Well, and we all have to remember what avenue we have available to us to be able to make our informed decisions. And that avenue is right there. That's our only avenue. It's not appropriate for myself, which I made a mistake already in my term, but it's not appropriate for us to go directly to department heads. Our avenue to district staff is right there, Mr. Wall. That's our only employee. Yes, Councilor.
I don't expect Mr. Wall to have all the answers that I'm gonna throw at him. So why would we go down this road of, oh, we have to talk to Mr. Wall? It has to be
Because he can get those answers for us.
But why, if Mr. Beal is the guy who runs the plow department or the road cleaning, what is the harm in having him sit in a roundtable P&P meeting to help us do a better job at formulating the procedure? You know, he might have some real good input. And that if that input gets lost in translation through Mr. Wall back to us as counselor, he'd be sitting there tearing his hair out going, that's not what I meant, right?
Yeah.
I don't get why we get hung up on this, oh, well, we can't talk to anybody else, we only can talk to Mr. Wall, like.
Because our governance is on a policy level, not on a procedural level.
What does that mean? Like, I don't get that. Like, Doug Beal is the guy that we have hired within the district to do the job for us, right? And if we can talk to him one-on-one with Mr. Wall in the room, if that's not okay, fair enough, whatever. I guess I don't know how to do this job at all, but to me, I like to get that guy in the room that knows exactly what he's doing in that aspect of his job. Mr. Wall has enough on his plate. He can't be expected to know absolutely every little in and out.
No, he's not going to be able to answer the question at that moment. But if we have questions procedurally about our district staff, it has to go through Mr. Wall, and he can find the answers for us. It's no different than any other staff report. Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, and you know, I echo Councillor Howe's frustration, but you know, this is how it is set up. As slow a process as it is, this is the way it was developed for a reason. Right now, we may be able to get over to Northern Metallic a lot faster from the inn, just ripping across the grass, but there are avenues we have to take, and even though it's slower, we have to go down this route, and
And realistically,
we just need to know how to navigate it so we can.
That's right. Those avenues are set in place for a reason, and we also have council procedure bylaws for a reason as well. If we want to relook at our council procedure bylaws, we can definitely do that. But this is the avenue that we are mandated and allowed to discover. It's not appropriate for us to speak directly to staff, senior staff. Councilor Majinski.
Can I do an analogy on this? As a professional in cooking for 20 years, you always went to the top and asked. You don't always ask your fellow coworkers that are prep cooks, first cooks, second cooks, because they might have a different idea than the chef, and he's the one leading the ship, and he has the timeline structured out. You always go to him first, and then he can tell the demi chefs, the chef de parties, sous chefs from there where to go, and then they direct everybody down. It's a trickle effect, and if you don't follow that trickle effect properly, things get congealed everywhere, and it throws a wrench in everything. Like if you got a salad to go out before the palate cleanser, it's a big issue, you know. And if you got a 9-course meal going out, it's a big problem. So it backlogs everything. So
Yeah.
even though Mr. Beal has a lot of people under him, you don't just go and tell that plow truck driver, hey, no, turn around. You got to go open and do my driveway because he missed it. They have procedures they follow, and they go by the book. And that in orders efficiency and structure. And if you don't have that efficiency and structure, then it's all for
It's a
nothing.
sinking ship.
It's a sinking ship. So you always got to go top down. It works.
No, you're correct. And don't get me wrong, like, everybody here at this table has some good ideas about snow removal. We can implement those procedural changes that you would like to see on a policy level. Don't get me wrong, all of those suggestions are valid, but we need to go about it on a policy and bylaw level. Councillor Howe?
If you are going to create a policy,
Yes.
that's what our plan is to create the policy.
Yes.
Would you not want your top shooter in the room? Would you not want Doug Beal in here to help us walk through this?
He'll be in the room, but he'll also have prepared a report for Mr. Wall to give to us as well, with different service level options. That's what we have to keep in mind.
But don't say, hey, why don't we, how does it affect you starting at 4 a.m. or how would don't talk with Mr. Beal with that, talk through Mr. Wall to that?
No, in creating this policy, those options will be in the report, and the ramifications of those options will be in the report as well. Councillor Norwood.
And I'm in the way I envision it. If this like I would assume that the department head that is directly involved with snow clearing would be consulted, right? I mean, that's my hope and dream. But if this policy isn't what we want, we just ship it back. Like we
Tweak it
don't
here and there.
we don't get a policy here. You're stuck with it. Deal. We direct staff into what we want to see. They bring it back. If it's good, good. If not, well, I don't like this. We're gonna do it again, right? And we're gonna
Or add to it. Or,
expand on this area.
Yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't say we're just going to shoot it back. We're going to have a discussion on where we'd like to see service levels increased
Sure.
or lowered.
But I think everybody's in agreement, though. We do need to develop a policy. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
Okay, so can we make a motion, or can I make a motion for staff to bring that report to?
Yes, it wasn't seconded. So
Okay, thank you. We got off track. Second on the motion, please.
which is to bring a snow removal policy for council review.
Yes. Councillor Majinski seconded. Any more questions or comments about that before we call the question? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, I believe that's all for discussion items for this evening. Question and answer period. We do have press in the room. Does press have any questions
Got lots of questions, nothing that's appropriate
for this agenda? Okay, we can speak after then. Okay, so before we move to item 10.1, I'd like to take a quick recess because I'm bursting. 10-minute recess, please.